By the time the last member left the gym, I had already refreshed the rideshare app 3 times and watched the price climb higher each time. Still stranded, I looked up from my phone. Adrian Cole, our new trainer, stood near the front desk with his duffel bag over one shoulder. He had only been working with us for a week, long enough for me to know he was good with clients, remembered everyone's names, and somehow looked composed even after hours of back-to-back sessions. "My car's in the shop," I said. "They promised 2 days. Apparently that means whenever they feel like it." Adrian glanced at the screen in my hand. "You're paying that much to get home? It's late. I'll drive you." The answer came so quickly that I thought I had misheard him. "You don't have to." "I know. That's not exactly convincing." He smiled. "We're going roughly the same direction. Save your money." I hesitated. We barely knew each other outside of work, and accepting a ride from a new coworker felt more personal than standing beside him while he corrected someone's deadlift form. Adrian seemed to read my hesitation without taking offense. "You can spend $40 proving you're independent," he said. "Or you can let me drive 20 minutes. 20. Approximately. That should have warned me. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in his passenger seat while the gym disappeared behind us. The drive was easier than I expected. Adrian didn't fill every silence. He asked how long I had worked there, then remembered that I had mentioned taking evening classes when we were introduced earlier in the week. "You said Tuesdays were your worst nights," he said as he changed lanes. "Work, then class assignments." I turned toward him. "You remember that?" He shrugged, eyes on the road. "You said it. Most people heard things. Adrian seemed to store them." By the time we reached my apartment building, I had stopped thinking about whether accepting the ride had been awkward. He pulled over at the curb. "Thanks," I said. "Seriously, you saved me from making a terrible financial decision. Happy to prevent economic collapse." I laughed and reached for the door handle. Then Adrian said, "What time do you finish tomorrow?" I looked back at him. "Same time." "Okay." I waited. He glanced over as if the rest should have been obvious. "I can take you home again. You don't even know how long my car will be gone." "Doesn't matter." For a second, neither of us moved. One ride because I was stuck made sense. Offering the next one before I had even asked felt like something else. I told myself Adrian was simply the kind of person who helped when he could. Then I got out of the car wondering why I was already thinking about tomorrow night. The next night, Adrian remembered exactly when I finished. I knew because at 9:45, while I was wiping down the front counter and checking the closing list, I saw him finish with his last client. He disappeared into the staff area, came back with his duffel bag, and gave me a small nod on his way toward the doors. I assumed he was leaving. At 10, I locked the front entrance and stepped into the parking lot. Adrian was still there. He was sitting in his car with the interior light glowing faintly across his face, looking at his phone. The moment he saw me, he put it away and started the engine. "You waited. You sound surprised. I thought you left. I said I'd drive you." Apparently, to Adrian, that settled the matter. By the third night, I stopped pretending the rides were unexpected. By the fourth, something stranger happened. They became routine. Adrian always kept the passenger seat empty, even though the back of his car usually held a gym bag, resistance bands, a water bottle, and whatever else he carried between sessions. I never had to move anything before getting in. The music changed too. The first night, some low instrumental playlist had been playing. A few drives later, he handed me his phone while we were stopped at a light. "Pick something." "You trust my taste?" "No. I'm gathering evidence." I chose a playlist anyway. The following evening, it was already playing when I opened the passenger door. I noticed. I pretended I didn't. He also remembered that I hated the main avenue after 10 because roadwork narrowed it to one lane. After I complained about it once, Adrian started taking the quieter route through the residential streets without asking. None of those things meant anything by themselves. That became my favorite explanation. Adrian was attentive. Adrian was considerate. Adrian probably remembered details about everyone. I had watched him with clients. Remembering things was part of what made him good at his job. So when I finished earlier than expected one evening and found him packing his bag, I decided to make things easier for him. "You can go," I said. He looked over. "Where?" "Home." That was the plan eventually. "I mean now, I can get another ride tonight." His hands stopped for half a second. "Why?" I laughed. "Because you have a life? I can wait." "Adrian, you've already finished. So you don't have to sit around because my car decided to betray me." He zipped his bag. "It's fine, Noah." There was something unexpectedly final in the way he said my name. I raised both hands. "Okay, just offering you freedom. I'll try to survive." 20 minutes later, I was still finishing paperwork when I glanced through the glass doors. Adrian's car was parked beneath one of the overhead lights. He was inside, looking at his phone. He could have been halfway home by then. Instead, he was waiting for me. When I finally walked outside, he unlocked the passenger door before I reached it. "Sorry," I said as I climbed in. "For what?" "Making you wait. You didn't make me." He pulled out of the parking lot. That sentence stayed with me longer than it should have. "You didn't make me." I looked through the window at the passing storefronts and reminded myself that kindness did not automatically become attraction just because I wanted to understand it that way. Still, a question had started following me home every night. If Adrian could leave whenever he wanted, why did he keep choosing not to? By the end of the week, I had learned that Adrian could tell something was wrong with me before I said a word. The gym was unusually busy that evening, and by 9 I had already dealt with a scheduling mistake, an impatient customer, and enough small problems to make me want silence more than conversation. I thought I was hiding it well. Apparently not. Adrian passed the front desk between clients, slowed, and looked at me. "Bad night." "I'm having a wonderful time." "That bad?" I gave him a look. He smiled and kept walking. His final client left before I finished closing. I expected Adrian to disappear into the staff area, grab his bag, and wait in his car like usual. Instead, he stayed nearby, organizing equipment that didn't particularly need organizing while I worked through the last of my tasks. I noticed that too. I was beginning to notice everything. When we finally got into his car, I leaned my head against the seat and exhaled. Adrian pulled out of the parking lot. "You want to tell me what happened?" "Not especially." "Okay." He didn't ask again. 3 blocks later, I started talking anyway. I told him about the customer who had blamed me for a booking problem I hadn't caused. Then I complained about the paperwork waiting for me the next morning. Adrian listened without interrupting. When I finished, he said, "You know you don't have to solve every problem just because someone puts it in front of you. That sounds suspiciously healthy." "I have occasional moments." I laughed despite myself. The tension I had carried all evening began to loosen. Maybe that was why, when my phone buzzed with an update from the repair shop, I read it aloud without thinking. "They need more time with my car." Adrian's response was immediate. "Good." I turned toward him. He went still for half a second. "Good. I mean, good that they're fixing it properly." "That is absolutely not what you meant. It could have been. You sounded happy." "I'm deeply passionate about responsible automotive repair." I stared at him until the corner of his mouth moved. Something warm and dangerous shifted in my chest. "You know," I said, "most people would be disappointed to learn they have to keep driving their coworker home. I never said I had to." There it was again. That distinction. I watched the streetlights slide across his face. "Why doesn't waiting bother you?" Adrian kept his eyes on the road. "I like driving at night." I nodded slowly. "That explains driving." He glanced at me. "Doesn't explain me." For once, Adrian had. Nothing ready. No joke. No practical answer. Just a silence that suddenly felt too full for the small space between us. I looked away first. A minute later, Adrian changed the subject, and I let him. But when he stopped outside my building, neither of us immediately reached for anything. I thought about him noticing my mood before I spoke. Staying after his last client. Waiting night after night when nobody asked him to. Then I thought about that one careless word. Good. Coincidence had been a comfortable explanation when Adrian was simply doing me a favor. It was getting harder to use now, because the longer my car stayed in the shop, the more Adrian seemed to want exactly what I was starting to want too. Another night together. After that night, I became painfully aware of every time Adrian looked at me. Not because he suddenly did it more, because now I was watching for it. For most of the next shift, nothing happened that I could use as proof of anything. Adrian trained clients. I worked the front desk. When we crossed paths, he spoke to me exactly as he would have before. Professional. Easy. Controlled. It almost convinced me I had imagined the silence in his car. Then Evan ruined that theory. He was finishing some work near the desk while I checked the closing schedule. "You still without a car?" he asked. "Unfortunately. I'm heading your way tonight. I can drop you off." The offer was so ordinary that I answered without thinking. "Actually, that would be great. You're getting a ride with Evan?" Adrian's voice came from behind me. I turned. He had stopped several feet away, towel over one shoulder, expression neutral enough that I might have missed the tension if I hadn't spent several nights sitting beside him in a dark car. "Apparently," I said, "you get the night off." I was already waiting. The words landed harder than they should have. Evan glanced between us. "I really am going that direction," he said. "I know," Adrian replied. Something in his tone made me look at him more carefully. He shifted his attention back to me. "Does he know which route you take?" I blinked. "I think he can manage roads. The main avenue is still a mess. I can show him the other route." Adrian nodded once. "Fine." Clearly wasn't. For the rest of the shift, he wasn't rude. That would have been easier to explain. He simply became quieter with me, answering questions with fewer words and focusing intensely on things that did not require that much concentration. By closing, I was annoyed enough to confront him. Evan had gone outside ahead of me when I found Adrian near the staff area. "Are you actually upset that I'm getting a ride with someone else?" He looked at me. "No. You're doing a convincing impression." "I'm not upset." "Then what is this?" Adrian picked up his duffel bag. "I don't like plans changing without warning." I stared at him. "What plan?" His jaw tightened slightly. "The ride. There was no official plan. You knew I was taking you, and now Evan is. That's apparently been established." I almost laughed, except Adrian didn't look amused. For the first time, his behavior felt too specific to file under kindness. "You know you're making this weird, right?" His eyes met mine. For a moment, I thought he might finally say something that would explain all of it. Instead, he looked away. "You should go. He's waiting." I stood there another second, wanting him to stop me for reasons I wasn't ready to examine. He didn't. Outside, Evan unlocked his car. As I climbed into the passenger seat, I glanced across the parking lot. Adrian was standing beside his own car. The same car I had gotten into after every shift. The same passenger seat he always kept empty for me. He looked away first. During the drive, Evan talked about work, and I answered when I was supposed to, but my mind stayed behind in that parking lot. Adrian had said the rides were convenient. He had said he liked driving at night. He had given me every harmless explanation I needed. But none of them explained why another man taking me home had bothered him. And for the first time, I stopped asking myself whether I was imagining something. I started wondering what Adrian was trying so hard not to admit. The next shift was worse than an argument would have been. Adrian was perfectly polite. So was I. We spent most of the evening behaving like two coworkers who had never sat together in his car night after night, never learned each other's routines, never had a conversation in a parking lot that left one of us jealous and the other wondering why. By closing, I had decided I wasn't going to assume anything. I finished the last of my work, picked up my phone, and opened the rideshare app. Then I looked through the glass doors. Adrian's car was still there. He was waiting. For a few seconds, I just stared at it. Then I walked outside. Adrian watched me approach but didn't unlock the passenger door immediately. Neither of us moved. I stopped beside the car. "Do you actually want to drive me home?" His expression changed. "Not much. Just enough." Yes. Because if this is some obligation you've accidentally created for yourself, I can get home another way. It isn't. You seemed pretty unhappy about Evan doing it. I know. That was more honesty than I expected. I opened the door and got in. The first few minutes were quiet. The playlist I had chosen days earlier was playing softly, which somehow made the silence more intimate instead of less. Finally, Adrian said, "I shouldn't have acted like that." "Probably not. I wasn't angry at you." That wasn't exactly the confusing part. His hands tightened slightly on the steering wheel. I turned toward him. "Why did it bother you?" Adrian exhaled. For once, he didn't reach immediately for a joke or a practical explanation. "At work, there's always someone around," he said. "Clients, staff, somebody needing something." I waited. "These drives are different." "Different how?" He glanced at me, then back at the road. "They're the only time I get you to myself." My pulse stumbled. The sentence was quiet, almost careful, but there was no harmless version of it. "You like having me to yourself?" A faint smile touched his mouth, though he still looked tense. "I like this. This being. Talking to you. Driving around. Whatever we've been doing every night." I looked out the windshield because looking at him suddenly felt dangerous. All those evenings I had spent constructing innocent explanations collapsed into something much simpler. Adrian wanted the time too. Maybe I wasn't imagining any of it. When we reached my building, he pulled over and turned off the engine. Usually that was my cue to thank him and leave. Neither of us moved. The music stopped with the engine, leaving the car unnaturally quiet. I looked toward the entrance of my building, then back at Adrian. "You know I'm home, right?" "I noticed. So why are we still sitting here?" His eyes met mine. There was something unguarded in his expression now that I had never seen under the bright lights of the gym. I could hear my own breathing. Adrian's gaze dropped for a second, then returned to my face. He didn't touch me. I didn't move closer. But the distance between us suddenly felt deliberate. "You said you drive me because we're going roughly the same direction," I said. "We are. You said you wait because you don't mind waiting." "I don't. And you said you like driving at night." "I do." I almost smiled. "You have an explanation for everything." "Usually." "Then explain this." I gestured lightly between us, meaning the parked car, the silence, the fact that neither of us seemed willing to end the night. Adrian looked down at his hands for a moment. When he answered, his voice was quieter. Maybe practical reasons stopped being the point. Something shifted permanently. Not because he had confessed anything. He hadn't. Not because we kissed. We didn't. But suddenly I knew the same thing Adrian knew. These rides mattered. I mattered inside them. And that should have answered the question that had been following me home every night. Instead, as I finally reached for the door, a bigger one took its place. If Adrian wanted this time with me badly enough to wait for it, protect it, and get jealous when someone else took his place, why was he still so careful not to say what he actually wanted? For the next few shifts, Adrian seemed determined to prove that nothing had changed. At work, he became almost aggressively professional. He talked to me when he needed something from the front desk. He smiled when everyone else was around. He never lingered long enough for anyone to notice that we had spent several minutes sitting outside my apartment after he had. Admitted our drives were no longer about convenience. Then closing came, and the version of Adrian who climbed into the car with me was different. Not dramatically. That would have been easier. He simply stopped pretending our conversations were casual. He told me things without turning them into jokes first. He admitted that being around people all day could exhaust him, even though everyone assumed he loved constant attention. He talked about how strange it was to spend hours listening to clients explain their goals and fears while revealing almost nothing about himself. "You're doing it now," I said one night. "Doing what?" "Revealing things." He glanced at me. "Maybe you're easier to talk to." The warmth that moved through me was immediately followed by frustration. Adrian could say things like that in the dark. Under the gym lights, he could barely let our eyes meet for too long. A few nights later, I finally asked the question that had been building since we sat outside my building. Do you do this with other coworkers? His hands stayed steady on the wheel. Do what? Wait for them. Drive them home. Remember their playlists. Get annoyed when somebody else drives them. That last one feels unnecessarily specific. It's supposed to. He was quiet. I watched him. Well, no one word. No explanation. Somehow that made it worse. Because now there was nothing left for me to misunderstand except why he still refused to name it. The next evening, Evan caught me watching Adrian from behind the front desk. You two fighting? No, could have fooled me. We're fine. Evan glanced toward Adrian, then back at me. Whatever happened? Pretending nothing changed is making both of you pretty obvious. Before I could answer, he walked away. I hated that he was right. Later, while checking the staff schedule for the following week, I noticed something that made me stop. Adrian's sessions had been ending earlier. Not just that night. Several nights. I looked back through the schedule. The pattern was clear. When Adrian first started driving me, our hours had been close enough to make his explanation believable. They weren't anymore. That evening, I waited until we were in his car. How long have your sessions been ending this early? Adrian looked at me. What? Your schedule. I saw it. His expression tightened. Noah. You told me our hours lined up. They did. He looked back at the road. So all those nights I found you sitting outside. I was waiting. I know you were waiting. I'm asking why. Silence filled the car. Finally, Adrian said, because I wanted to. My chest tightened. You could have gone home. Yes. You had other things you could have done. Yes. But you stayed. Yes. Each answer stripped away another excuse. I waited for him to finish the thought. He didn't. That was the problem. Adrian could admit he wanted the time. He could admit he chose to wait. He could tell me I was easier to talk to than other people. But he still seemed determined to stop one sentence short of telling me what any of it meant. I turned toward the window. For the first time since the rides began, I wondered whether understanding Adrian's feelings was actually the wrong question. Maybe I already understood them. Maybe what scared me was something else. He had created a place for us where wanting me cost him nothing. A dark car, empty streets, 20 minutes between work and home. And I was starting to want something that couldn't stay inside it forever. The message from the repair shop arrived halfway through my next shift. Your vehicle is ready for pickup. I read it twice. For days, that was exactly what I had wanted. My own car back. No rideshare prices. No depending on anyone else to get home. Instead, my first thought was Adrian. He was across the gym with a client. So I put my phone away and waited until later to tell him. They finished my car, I said when he passed the desk. Adrian stopped. Your car. Apparently they remembered they're a repair shop. Normally he would have made a joke. Instead, he nodded. That's good. Yeah. I'll pick it up before my next shift. A beat passed. Good. The word sounded completely different from the last time he had said it. I waited. This was the obvious moment for him to say the rides didn't have to stop. We could get coffee after work. Drive somewhere because we wanted to. Do anything that admitted the past week had created something worth keeping. Adrian said nothing. Anyway, I said, thought you should know. Thanks. That night, he still drove me home. Neither of us talked about it being the last time. By my next closing shift, my car was sitting in the gym parking lot again. My keys felt strangely heavy in my hand. When I finished locking up, Adrian came through the doors behind me. For one automatic second, he turned toward his car. Then he saw mine. He stopped. I held up the keys. Guess you're officially free. His expression tightened. Looks like it. Another opening. Another silence. I hated how much it hurt. There's no reason for you to wait anymore, I said. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Right? That single word decided something for me. I started toward my car. Noah. I stopped. Adrian was still standing beneath the parking lot lights. When I told you our schedules lined up, he said. They did. At first. I didn't move. My schedule changed. I know. Not just a little. He took a step closer. I moved workouts. I pushed errands later. Some nights I finished more than an hour before you. The keys tightened in my hand. You rearranged your evenings? Yes. Why? His eyes stayed on mine. Because I wanted those drives. The answer should have felt like victory. Instead, frustration rose through me. You wanted the drives. I wanted the time with you. Then why did you need me to have a broken car before you could admit that? Adrian flinched slightly. I kept going because if I stopped, I knew I would accept another almost answer. You waited for me when you could have left. You remembered everything I said. You got jealous when Evan drove me home. You changed your schedule just to sit in a car with me for 20 minutes. I know. And now my car is back. His gaze shifted briefly toward it. So what happens? He didn't answer quickly enough. That was the entire problem. I shook my head. I don't need another ride, Adrian. I know. And wanting those rides isn't the same as wanting something outside them. His face changed then because he understood what I was asking. Not whether he liked me. We were past that. I was asking whether he could choose me without a practical reason making the choice safe. I turned toward my car again. Behind me, Adrian said my name. This time I didn't stop. Because for weeks he had been showing me exactly how much he wanted me. Now I needed to know whether he was willing to say it before I drove away. I made it 3 steps. Then I heard Adrian moving behind me. Not toward his car. Toward me. Noah, wait. I stopped beside my driver's door but didn't turn around immediately. For weeks, every important conversation between us had happened because I needed something from him. A ride. A way home. 20 minutes in his passenger seat that neither of us had been brave enough to call what it was. Now my own car was right in front of me. There was nothing left for Adrian to offer that I actually needed. When I finally faced him, he had stopped several feet away. I don't know how to do this without making it sound like another excuse, he said. Then don't make one. He looked down briefly, then back at me. I kept telling myself I was helping you. I waited. The first night, maybe I was. After that, he exhaled. After that, I knew exactly what I was doing. The parking lot was almost silent around us. I waited because I wanted to see you walk through those doors. I kept the passenger seat clear because I knew you'd be sitting there. I changed my schedule because those drives became the part of my day I looked forward to most. My grip loosened around my keys. Adrian stepped closer. I was jealous when Evan drove you because I wanted to be the one beside you. And when you told me your car was fixed, I hated hearing it. Why? He gave me a look that made the question suddenly feel unnecessary. But I needed the answer anyway. Say it. Adrian swallowed. Because I like you, Noah. There it was. Simple enough that I almost laughed at how hard we had made it. He continued before I could respond. And I've been hiding behind the rides because they gave me a reason to spend time with you without having to risk finding out whether you wanted the same thing. That worked well. A nervous smile crossed his face. Not especially. I looked toward my car, then back at him. So what happens now? This time, Adrian didn't hesitate. Now I ask you something without pretending it has anything to do with getting you home. My heartbeat accelerated. He came 1 step closer, leaving enough distance between us that the choice still belonged to me. Go out with me. I stared at him. Where? I don't care. That's a terrible plan. I can make a better one. Despite everything, I smiled. Adrian's expression softened, but he didn't look away. A real date, he said. Not a ride after work. Not because your car is broken. Not because our schedules happen to match. They don't. I'm aware. And you mean a date? Yes. With me. He laughed quietly. You're enjoying this. A little. His smile faded into something more vulnerable. Yes, Noah. With you. Because I want you there. For the first time since those rides began, there was nothing left to interpret. No helpful coworker. No convenient route. No waiting because he had nowhere else to be. Just Adrian standing in a parking lot, asking for me when I was completely free to leave. Yes, I said. He blinked. Yes, yes, I'll go out with you. The relief on his face made something inside me finally unclench. I stepped closer. Adrian didn't move until I did. When only a small space remained between us, his eyes searched mine, giving me every opportunity to change my mind. I didn't. I closed the distance. The kiss was soft at first, almost cautious, as if both of us were adjusting to the fact that this was finally something we were allowed to do. Then Adrian's hand settled lightly against my arm, and I kissed him again. When we separated, he was smiling. "So," he said quietly, "do you still need a ride?" I looked over at my repaired car, then back at him. "No, good." This time, we both knew exactly what he meant. A few weeks later, I stood behind the front desk watching Adrian explain an exercise to a client, as if he had never kissed me beside my car in the parking lot. At work, we kept things professional. That part hadn't changed much. What had changed was everything underneath it. There were no more careful silences when our eyes met. No pretending I hadn't noticed when he smiled at me from across the gym. No wondering whether the person I knew inside his car disappeared the moment we walked through the doors. We were dating. Actually dating. The kind that involved plans made before closing time instead of excuses invented afterward. And somehow, knowing exactly where I stood with him made working beside him easier rather than harder. That evening, I finished the closing list and picked up my keys. My own keys. My car had been back long enough that holding them no longer felt strange. I locked the doors and stepped outside. Adrian was waiting beneath the parking lot lights. For a second, the sight of him stopped me. It looked almost exactly like those first nights. His car was parked nearby. Mine was several spaces away. The gym was quiet behind us, and the workday was over. But there was no broken car now. No expensive rideshare waiting on my phone. No convenient route for Adrian to use as an explanation. I walked toward him, letting my keys swing loosely from one finger. "You know I have a car. I've seen it. And you know you don't have to wait for me. I'm familiar with the concept." I smiled. Adrian glanced toward my car, then toward his. Weeks earlier, this was where he would have asked if I needed a ride. Instead, he looked at me and said, "Where are we going?" The question was so simple that it brought every other one back with it. Why was he waiting? Why did he remember? Why did he care who drove me home? Why did he keep choosing not to leave? I had spent so much time trying to understand those rides that I had nearly missed the most important thing about them. Adrian had always been free to go. So had I. Now there were two working cars in the parking lot and absolutely nothing forcing either of us to follow the other anywhere. I stepped closer. "I thought you were the one making the plan. I was hoping you'd have ideas. Still terrible at this. And yet you said yes." I reached for his hand. That was apparently my first mistake. He laughed and closed his fingers around mine. Neither of us moved toward a car yet. There was no hurry anymore. Eventually, we would choose one. We would pick somewhere to go, probably argue about music, and take whichever route kept us together a little longer. But this time, getting home wasn't the point. Maybe it never really had been. Adrian squeezed my hand. "So?" I looked at the two cars waiting for us, then at him. "Anywhere." And we left together because neither of us had to.